The Formula One weekend in Hungary started with the big news of Ricciardo returning to F1 with a full-time driving role. With the improvements shown by McLaren at Silverstone, many eyes were on the Woking-based team to see their next step. However, until the moment that starts the Hungarian Grand Prix, Red Bull maintained a very dominant form with 11 consecutive victories. But they had a bigger challenge at the Hungaroring to break McLaren's record of 11 consecutive victories standing since 1988. This is a very rare opportunity for an F1 team, as it is extremely hard to steal victories 11 times continuously from the rival teams. At least, the great Mercedes team that dominated the turbo hybrid era between 2014 and 2020 was unable to achieve that feat too. This is the full recap of the 2023 Hungarian GP. Stay tuned to the last second of the video to get a full insight into the race weekend. But before we proceed, hit the subscribe button and smash the bell icon for more exciting updates. The first practice session on Friday morning started with some bad signs to the whole weekend, as it was totally affected by the rain. Many drivers were observed to be sliding and spinning through the track as they lost their grip. The biggest damages of the session were experienced by Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz, who crashed into a barrier after sliding through the track. As drivers were unable to unleash the full potential of their challenger with the available track conditions, teams failed to collect any usable data. However, the next two practice sessions were without any effects from the rain, and drivers were able to enjoy the full freedom of the track. Continuing their rhythms, Red Bull, McLaren and Mercedes were topping the time charts before the start of the qualifying round Saturday evening. Qualifying produced an unexpected result, with Lewis Hamilton's first pole since the latter stage of 2021, which brought a controversial end. He had to beat both regular pole sitters of the season, Verstappen and Norris, who are in fine form since the last race in Silverstone by a very slim margin. It was nice to see two McLarens inside the top 5 of the starting grid after their heroic driving at Silverstone. The most notable elimination at the end of Q1 was George Russell, who was unable to set a competitive time as he lost his tyre temperature before his final attempt. Both Williams cars were seen in the bottom 5 of the first qualifying session, as they were unable to repeat the same success that they enjoyed at Silverstone. Tsunoda and Magnussen were the other two who were knocked out at the end of Q1. 15 remaining drivers set their best time in Q2 with medium rubber, and Verstappen was able to top the timesheets. However, his lap time was deleted due to the violation of track limits, and he set another lap time which was good enough for P2 in the second qualifying round. Norris led the timesheets when the top 10 were headed to the final qualifying round. Ferrari driver Carlos Sainz was unable to set a lap time good enough for Q3, and he was knocked out alongside with Ocon, Ricciardo, Stroll and Gasly. According to the new regulations, all 10 drivers set their best time with soft tyres in the final qualifying session. In the first sequence of lap times, Verstappen topped the timesheets. Hamilton and Norris were behind him by a margin of milliseconds, but the Dutchman didn't show any improvement in his final attempt, and Hamilton was able to claim the pole position by posting a lap time of 1 minute 16.609 seconds. Behind him, Verstappen, Norris and Piastri set their lap times. Alfa Romeo pair Zhou and Bottas were in 4th and 6th positions, sandwiching the Ferrari driver Charles Leclerc in 5th. Continuing their poor forms, Alonso and Perez were in 8th and 9th position. The only Haas driver who regularly appears in Q3, Nico Hülkenberg, ended the final qualifying session as 10th in the starting grid. Pole sitter Hamilton didn't pose any considerable threat to the championship leader Max Verstappen as Mercedes fans expected, because he lost all of his advantage when the race approached turn 1. When the battle was going on between Verstappen and Hamilton, Piastri followed an inside line to pass the pole sitter Hamilton to snatch the second position. Zhou, who experienced a very slow start, lost his discipline and kissed the back of Ricciardo, creating a background necessary for a big disaster. Then Ricciardo ran into the back of Ocon, who subsequently hit teammate Gasly. Significant damage was experienced by both the Alpine cars, and they had to retire after entering the pit lane. Zhou was given a 5-second penalty for the contact that he made with Ricciardo. Meanwhile, Verstappen extended his lead to Piastri comfortably by leaving the DRS window. He was closely followed by Norris, who was able to beat Hamilton. In the middle of the pack, Perez was battling against Alonso for the 7th and 8th positions, and the Red Bull driver was able to complete that move on lap 8 with the assistance of DRS. At the start of lap 15, Verstappen maintained a 5-second gap with Piastri, and he was closely followed by Norris and Hamilton. Despite his poor qualifying, Sainz was comfortably in 6th position behind his teammate Leclerc, who was running in 5th. Hamilton, who started on mediums, switched to hards on lap 18, and a similar strategy was followed by Norris one lap later. Leclerc also decided to pit for a new set of tyres, but his strategy failed as the stop was delayed by a sticky tyre. Piastri also decided to enter the pit lane for the exchange of new rubber, but that decision affected his track position and he was passed by his teammate Lando Norris. After running on mediums for over 23 laps, Verstappen decided to pit hards and rejoin the track safely without losing his race lead to Norris, who was running in 2nd. Perez and Russell, who started on hards, decided to make their first pit stops in laps 24 and 29 respectively. Perez was in an extremely aggressive mode after pitting fresh rubber and was able to pass one by one up to the podiums. On lap 43, Piastri and Perez decided to enter the pit for a new set of mediums. The Red Bull crew was extremely fast by completing a tyre change within 1.9 seconds, releasing him to the tail of Piastri, who experienced a relatively slow pit stop. Meanwhile, the Aston Martin crew delivered a very slow pit stop for Alonso a few laps later, derailing all of his plans. After fighting hard, Perez overtook Piastri on lap 47 with a very tricky move around the outside of turn 1 and continued his charge towards a podium finish. On lap 50 and 52 respectively, Hamilton and Verstappen pitted a new set of medium rubber for their final stint. 7 laps later, Hamilton used all of his experience to beat the rookie driver Piastri to the 4th position. Norris was switched between 2 Red Bulls, but he was at a healthy distance from Perez running 3rd. Since then, there was no change to the podium order, despite Hamilton's late attack on Perez in the closing stages of the race. Behind podium finishers, Hamilton and Piastri crossed the finish line in 4th and 5th respectively. Russell, who endured a bad qualifying session, was able to complete the race as 6th on the grid. Behind him, Leclerc and Sainz saw the checkered flag continuing their poor form. The last 2 point-offering positions were reserved by Alonso and Stroll, who were driving with English racing colours on their livery, and Ricciardo, who made a comeback to F1, was able to complete the race as P13 in the final standings, adding some justification to the De Vries replacement. And in that way, the Hungarian Grand Prix ended in a more competitive way, delivering the 7th consecutive Grand Prix victory to the reigning world champion. With that victory, Red Bull achieved a rare record of 12 consecutive victories in one season, and they still have the chance of increasing that count in the next race at Spa-Francorchamps. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel to get more exciting Formula 1 news. See you in the next video, guys. Goodbye.